So Tyson Fury fails to deliver. The Alexander Usyk fight is officially off. Fury has got a long history of messing around with certain fights. Alexander Usyk has got a long history of being a straight shooter and being very easy to deal with. So you do the math. Alex Krasuk was on TalkSport to confirm that barring some miracle, the Fury fight is off. Frank Warren was also on the phone to TalkSport on a damage limitation exercise, contradicting himself and talking absolute rubbish. And shame on Simon Jordan for allowing him to get away with it. I'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But let's first address the main culprit here, Tyson Fury. He is a pathological liar, a gaslighter extraordinaire, and he has nothing but absolute contempt for the fans. This is the biggest and most blatant duck I've ever seen in the heavyweight division since Riddick Bowe vacated his WBC belt instead of fighting Lennox Lewis. In fact, this is worse, because at least with Bowe, he gave up the belt and allowed everyone to move on. Whereas with Tyson Fury, he has strung the entire world along for 6 months over a fight he clearly had no intention of taking in the first place. He did a very similar thing in 2021, where he misled the public into believing that the undisputed fight with AJ was going to happen when he knew damn well that the arbitration with Wilder wouldn't allow it. There was still a lot of restrictions on travel and crowds at the time, which meant that Fury Wilder 3 wasn't financially viable. So rather than sitting around watching Hearn and Joshua continue to stay active and make a load of money boxing abroad, Team Fury hatched a plan to waste Eddie Hearn's time and keep AJ inactive. Tyson Fury is a man who claimed he'd fight AJ for free at Wembley, and a few months later he's charging people £30 for a Chisora trilogy. I used to accuse David Haye of having contempt for the fans when he was heavyweight champion, but that absolutely pales in comparison to the contempt that Tyson Fury has for the paying public. The man is an absolute charlatan. He ducked the David Price fight for the British title. He pulled out of the Ustinov fight. He turned down 60-40 to fight AJ back when Fury had no belt and AJ was still a much bigger star than him. He turned down a fight with Dylan White for the WBC Diamond Belt a couple years before they eventually fought and took on Tom Schwartz instead. He scuppered the Usyk fight early last year by moving the goalposts halfway through negotiations demanding a tune-up. He could have fought Joe Joyce last December, but instead fought a trilogy with Chisora. Last summer, Fury said he wouldn't fight Usyk for anything less than $500 million. After the Chisora fight, he said he was injured and would need 6 to 8 weeks to heal from surgery. He was laying the groundwork to get out of the Usyk fight right from the very beginning. And this brings me on to Frank Warren and his performance on TalkSport today and the damage limitation campaign that he's just launched, which is full of contradictions and gaslighting, all very predictable. Team Fury originally said the split for the Usyk fight will be 50-50. Facts. But they moved the goalposts on that. The fight was originally supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, and Usyk was happy with it. But Team Fury moved the goalposts on that. The original deadline for the fight was March 4th, but they moved the goalposts on that. Team Fury originally had a rematch clause in the contract, but they moved the goalposts on that as well. Tyson Fury has moved the goalposts time and time again during this negotiation, and yet Frank Warren has the audacity to sit up there and act like it's Usyk's team who don't want the fight. Absolute blatant gaslighting. And here's where the contradiction comes in. When TalkSport mentioned the fact that Usyk was willing to accept 70-30 in Tyson Fury's favor, Frank Warren said it's because Usyk can't get a payday anywhere else. But he then turns around and suggests that Usyk and his team don't want the fight. Well, hang on, Frank. You just said they accepted 30% because they want the payday and they can't get it anywhere else. But in the next breath, you suggest they don't want the payday? You're talking absolute rubbish, man. A week or so ago, I pointed out how strange it was that Team Fury were acting like the fight was nailed on to go ahead when Team Usyk were still very skeptical. I said at the time that this could be a PR setup by Team Fury, i.e., they knew the fight wasn't going to happen, but in order to preempt any public backlash, they acted as though they were fully confident that it would happen. So when the fight gets pulled, they can point the finger at Team Usyk and say, look, they were the ones who were sounding negative, not us, so it shows it's them who didn't want it. The reality is, Tyson Fury never wanted his fight from day one. So he constantly moved the goalposts and made increasingly ridiculous demands in the hope that Usyk would break off the negotiations, walk away from the table because he's either fed up of what Fury's doing or he's being forced to fight a mandatory. At which point Fury can say, oh look, Usyk pulled out, it wasn't me. And as for this rematch clause thing, Usyk allowed Fury to move the goalpost multiple times, agreed to all his demands, including a 70-30 split in Fury's favor, including fighting in Fury's backyard, yet you won't even give him a rematch clause in case there's a controversial decision in Fury's favor. What an absolute joke. Frank Warren said that Usyk accepted no rematch for the Gassiev fight for Undisputed at Cruiser. Yeah, that's because he wasn't being bent over a barrel and being asked to accept 30%, Frank. Negotiation is all about compromise, and compromise is a two-way thing. Tyson Fury hasn't compromised anything. The rematch clause was Team Fury's idea in the first place. All they've ever done is move the goalposts every step of the way in an attempt to try and get Usyk to walk away from the table. Carl Froch did this video the other day, where he was talking about his rematch with Mikkel Kessler. He was a much bigger star than Kessler at the time, making much bigger purses, but he wanted the Kessler rematch so bad that he offered Kessler 50-50 right off the bat to avoid any issues over the split. He said the deal was done in one conversation. One conversation. That's what happens when somebody really wants a fight. That is what Alexander Usyk has done with Tyson Fury, but Fury has done the exact opposite because he never wanted this fight in the first place. And that brings us on to this stuff Frank Warren is talking about regarding Fury's training camp. Sugar Hill only flew into the UK a few days ago because he's training Lawrence Sokoli for his cruiserweight title fight this weekend. According to Dempsey McKean, Fury has no southpaw sparring in the gym. April 29th is only 5 weeks away. You want us to believe that this is adequate preparation for the Usyk fight? You want us to believe that 5 weeks is enough to promote the biggest undisputed unification in the entire sport? Pull the other one, Frank. And as for Simon Jordan, you let Frank Warren completely off the hook. You let him come up there shouting and screaming, pushing everyone around in an attempt to distract the public from the fact that his man Tyson Fury blatantly ducked Alexander Usyk. The same energy you had for Eddie Hearn yesterday is what you should have had for Frank Warren today. Shame on you. Furthermore, it's because of people like you, Simon Jordan, that Tyson Fury behaves like this. You run around calling him the best heavyweight of his generation when he hasn't fought most of the heavyweights of his generation. You've given him a crown he hasn't earned. And in doing so, Fury has no incentive to face the likes of Usyk. If everyone's saying a Fury win over Usyk is a foregone conclusion, then what's the point in Fury taking the fight? What does he have to gain? He can earn more money taking an easy fight against Francis Ngannou. You're giving him carte blanche. That's what you've done. He's played you all like a fiddle. Tyson Fury has a total of 6 world title fights, 3 of them against the same man. Compare that to Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali, who had 26 world title fights each. Lennox Lewis, who had 17. Mike Tyson, who had 16. On and on it goes. You look at the top 10 heavyweights of the 1960s and 1970s. Muhammad Ali fought all of them. He fought Sonny Liston, Floyd Patterson, Zora Foley, Ernie Terrell, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Ron Lyle, Ernie Shavers, Jimmy Young, Jerry Quarry, Buster Mathis, Jimmy Ellis, Larry Holmes, on and on it goes. He fought literally everyone. He had 61 pro fights. How many of the current top 15 heavyweights has Tyson Fury fought? Deontay Wilder and Dylan White. 2 people. He hasn't fought Usyk, he hasn't fought AJ, he hasn't fought Joyce, he hasn't fought Ruiz, Hunter, Hrgovic, Bacoli, and everyone else. This guy has only fought 2 people in the current heavyweight top 15. And he's somehow gaslit many of you guys into believing he's not only the best heavyweight of his generation, but the greatest heavyweight of all time. It's absolutely extraordinary. It is, without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest gaslighting job I've ever seen in boxing. Worse than Floyd Mayweather, because Mayweather had a much deeper resume than Tyson Fury. And that's not to say that Tyson Fury doesn't have the ability or the potential to become a great fighter, but the only place you can do that, the only place you can prove that, is in the ring. You have to build a resume that's worthy of greatness, which Fury has apparently no interest in doing because so many of you guys are willing to give him that crown when he hasn't earned it. Let me tell you exactly what Tyson Fury is going to do next. He is going to let Alexander Usyk go off and fight his mandatories, and if Usyk struggles or loses, he's going to come out the woodwork and say, see, I told you he was no good. I told you he couldn't beat me. That is what he's going to do. And sadly, a lot of you are going to fall for it. Tyson Fury wants Usyk to get softened up by his mandatories before he even considers fighting him. And it suits Frank Warren down to the ground because two of those mandatories, Joyce and Dubois, are Frank Warren fighters. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. If I were advising Alexander Usyk, I'd tell him to never entertain a Fury fight ever again unless it's a 50-50 split and in a neutral location. As far as I'm concerned, Tyson Fury has foregone all of his privileges. The man has tarnished not only his own reputation, but the reputation of the entire sport of boxing. If you are a true boxing fan, not a fanboy, a true boxing fan, somebody who loves the sport first and foremost above any individual fighter, if you're a true boxing fan, you're not going to tolerate this kind of thing from Tyson Fury. You're going to demand better from him, from fighters in general, and from the sport. You're not going to give people like Fury carte blanche to do things like this, duck fights, by prematurely giving him the crown as the best in the division when he hasn't proven it yet in the ring, by beating the other top guys. The only bigger disgrace in boxing than Tyson Fury right now is the people who continue to defend him. I know some of his fans have turned against him, and rightly so, but there are still plenty of them defending him. Shame on you. You're not boxing fans. You're little pathetic fanboys who will never hold Tyson Fury to account, who act like this guy can walk on water and that butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Pathetic. You are literally simps for Tyson Fury. And here's the reason I really don't respect you. It's because Tyson Fury mugs you guys off. He mugs you off, and yet you continue to love him and adore him. You have no dignity. You have no self-respect. The man who acts like he's for the people is charging you £30 pay-per-views for a Chisora trilogy. The man who says he's for the people and for boxing and fight any man born from his mother just ducked the undisputed fight with Usyk for the second time because he ducked it early last year. He could have had the fight then, but midway through negotiations, I need a tune-up. Why'd you need a tune-up? You just fought Wilder a couple months previous. Man's a disgrace, and anyone who defends him is a disgrace. Frank Warren's a disgrace for facilitating this kind of thing that Fury's doing right now. Your man just ducked the biggest fight that can be currently made in boxing, Frank Warren, and you're out here trying to cover up for him. Shame on you. All of this stuff that Frank Warren is saying now about, we've accepted the rematch clause now, I talked Tyson Fury into it, and the only point of contention left is how much the split is going to be in the rematch. All of this stuff is absolute rubbish. Frank Warren has had 6 months to get this fight done, and his man Tyson Fury has continuously moved the goalposts every time Alexander Usyk has agreed to one of Fury's demands. Frank Warren knows that there's not enough time left now to get it all signed and promote this fight. He knows that. So all this stuff he's coming out with now is just absolute spin to try and cover up for the fact that his man Tyson Fury never wanted this fight in the first place. All this rubbish that's coming out of Frank Warren's mouth now, don't believe a word of it. He's trying to bamboozle you. It's just a face-saving exercise. That's all it is. Like I said at the start, who has the track record of being straightforward in negotiations and getting big fights done time and time again? Alexander Usyk. Who has the track record of messing about in fights, going all the way back to when he ducked the British title fight against David Price many years ago? Tyson Fury. But what? Frank Warren somehow wants us to believe that now, after this impeccable track record for all these years, Usyk is the one we shouldn't trust, and the guy with the dodgy track record, Tyson Fury, is the one we should trust. Yeah, do me a favor. Your man don't want the fight. Simple as that. Stop trying to con the fans, Frank. Anyway, I'm out. Who do you reckon lives here? David Hay? Reckon the Haymaker's in there? What do you reckon, Kieran? Reckon the Haymaker lives in there?